Hey folks, before we jump into today's incredible story, take just a second to hit that subscribe button. If you enjoy coins, history, and uncovering the hidden treasures from the past, this is the place you'll want to be. Let's get into it. You're probably here because of one simple, small, forgotten object. A coin. Not gold. Not silver. Just brass. A 1-cent coin from South Africa, dated 1962. Something you might think is worth little more than its weight, or maybe even just a keepsake from the past. But sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest stories. This isn't just about money. This is about memory, legacy, history, and sometimes, an unbelievable surprise waiting at the bottom of your old drawer. Picture this. It's 1962. South Africa is in a period of big change. The country had just introduced its decimal coinage the year before, replacing the old pound system. People were learning to think in cents and rands instead of shillings and pence. That 1-cent coin, fresh off the press, made of bright brass, was part of a whole new chapter in the country's financial history. It was large, about the size of a half-dollar coin, with a bold design that gave it presence even in a full pocket of change. On one side of the coin, there's the face of Jan van Riebeeck, a name familiar to many who grew up in South Africa. He was the Dutch navigator and colonial administrator who helped found Cape Town back in the 1600s. His portrait on the coin wasn't just a symbol of history, it was part of an identity, a sense of tradition tied up in national pride. On the other side of the coin, there's a covered wagon, a voortrekker wagon, representing the pioneer spirit of the early settlers who traveled inland during the Great Trek. These weren't just pictures. They were statements. They meant something to the people using them every day, and above it all, a motto: unity is strength. A simple phrase, but powerful. Written in both English and Afrikaans. Even that detail reflects the time, a country caught between two languages, two legacies, and an uncertain future. So yes, it's just a coin, but it's also a snapshot of an entire era. A time when the world was changing fast, and this little round piece of brass was right in the middle of it all. Now let's talk about what happens next. Over time, millions of these coins went into circulation. They were used for candy, newspapers, maybe bus fare. People barely looked at them. Most of them wore down quickly. Tossed in jars. Lost between couch cushions. Forgotten. But a few, just a few, were spared. Tucked away in collections, held back by collectors, or maybe stashed unknowingly in a shoebox that was never thrown out. So why should a man in his 60s care about this coin now? Because it's not just about the coin. It's about what it reminds us of. For some, it's the year you got your first job. Or the year your father gave you a few coins to get lunch at school. Maybe it was part of your grandfather's change, rattling in his coat pocket as he walked beside you to the store. These are more than just small moments. They are threads in the fabric of your life. And a coin like this, dated 1962, brings them rushing back. Now, let's say you still have one. Go ahead, dig it out. Take a close look. What do you see? If the details are still sharp, if Van Riebeeck's face is clean and well-defined, if the wagon still shows its wheels and cover clearly, you might have something better than average. If it's smooth, scratched, or dull, it's probably been well used, and that's fine too. It tells its own story. But if by chance, you have one in outstanding condition, maybe even uncirculated, that changes the game entirely. Collectors aren't just buying metal. They're buying stories. History. Rarity. And quality. And while millions were minted, only a few remain in top condition. Over time, coins in excellent shape become far more valuable than the rest. That's because they're harder to find, harder to replace, and more desirable to collectors who want to complete a perfect set. So here's where it gets interesting. Most circulated examples of the 1962 1-cent coin don't bring in big money. They're worth a few bucks here and there depending on where. But the market has changed in the last few years. Interest in South African coins, particularly from the early 60s, has grown. That means values are climbing. And when you get into the territory of high-grade, well-preserved coins, especially ones with unique toning, unusual mint features, or near-perfect surfaces, the prices can go from modest to jaw-dropping. And that brings us to the story you came to hear. There was a 1962 South Africa 1-cent coin. Same design. Same size. Same year. But it wasn't like the rest. This one had all the right ingredients. Exceptional condition. High-grade preservation. Possibly a proof strike or a rare variety. Certified. Slabbed. Perfectly kept. And when it sold, it didn't go for a few dollars. It didn't go for a few hundred. It sold for $60,010. That's not a misprint. $60,010. For a coin once worth just a single cent. Think about that. A piece of change you wouldn't bend down to pick up off the street, now fetching enough to buy a luxury car or cover a few years of retirement living. That's the magic of coins. That's the mystery. The reward. That's why we still care. So here's my question to you, do you have one? Is it in a drawer? An old tin? Maybe in the back of your father's desk, untouched for decades. Now's the time to look. Hold it in your hand. Feel the weight of it. Not just the metal, the history. The memories. The possibility. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this story, and want to hear more about rare coins and the treasures people overlook every day, don't forget to subscribe. You never know which piece of your past might turn out to be your next big discovery.